You know, it's just so sad. The butter knife claws that I used in the thumbnail actually look better than the CGI claws from X-Men Origins Wolverine. So with New Mutants coming out this weekend, we now have 13 X-Men movies, and I decided to rank all of them from the worst to the best. So let's get started by talking about number 13. So number 13 on my list, as you probably guessed it from my intro, is X-Men Origins Wolverine. And I think this is at the bottom of most people's list. X-Men Origins Wolverine is a dumpster fire of a movie. A lot of people, when they talk about X-Men Origins Wolverine, they say, oh, it's just a cliched action movie. And that's an insult to cliched action movies. I mean, it really is. Because this movie is just terrible. It's all over the place. Yes, it has a lot of really bad, action movie cliches in it, but it just has a lot of other terrible things. It has some bad slapstick humor that just doesn't quite land right, and it has terrible CGI, terrible wire work, terrible writing, terrible direction. They sew Deadpool's mouth together. Okay, whose idea was that? Come on. Okay, his nickname is Merc with the Mouth. Okay, that's like taking away Thor's thunder. He's God of Thunder. He's got to have it. Merc with the Mouth. Got to have it. Come on. So, but that's just one small thing of the millions of failures across the board that this movie has. It's kind of the origin movie that it is kind of interesting because everyone likes, Logan and everyone likes the Wolverine, but we already established what his origin was, how he became Weapon X in X-Men 2. So why exactly did we need an origin story for him? Well, we really don't. So, all in all, this movie just is a total misfire, total mess, and easily takes the number 13 spot. Number 12 on my list is, and I kind of hate to put it here, but New Mutants. Yeah, that's right, the latest X-Men movie that came out. Now, I made a review for this movie, and I gave it a C+. Some things did work with it. I really liked the dynamic of the main characters of Danny and Rain, and I thought that it was kind of interesting that they decided to be bold and kind of take a different direction, like having a bit of horror in the movie. But all in all, this movie is just a real mess, and the reason I put it at number 12, as opposed to my number 11 spot, and you're going to see what my number 11 movie is, quality-wise, it's a better quality movie than my number 11 spot. But rewatchability-wise, I'm never going to rewatch this movie. I have no reason to. I found it slightly entertaining the first go-around, but there's nothing about it that wants to bring me back in for a second viewing or a third viewing or anything like that at all. So that's really the separation factor here. So with that said, let's get into number 11. Number 11 on my list is Dark Phoenix. Now, like I said, quality-wise, New Mutants is a higher quality movie than Dark Phoenix. If I were to grade the two, like I said, I put C+ for Mutants, the grade that I would put for Dark Phoenix would be lower. With that said, I have rewatched Dark Phoenix. I actually do own Dark Phoenix. And there is some fun in this movie. Now, look, let's talk about the big problems first. The story. The story is all over the place in this movie. First off, we already have established from X-Men Apocalypse that she has the Phoenix-like powers. That's the groundwork for that is set in Apocalypse. So why does she need to then gain it again in the beginning space mission in the movie? I don't know. No one knows. They don't explain that at all. And then these space alien characters that come in and wreak havoc, they're totally useless to this movie. There's no need for them here. I didn't appreciate, they didn't bring anything to the table. This movie could have been totally fine with just Jean Grey has the Phoenix powers and she can't control them, and now it's up to the X-Men to save her from herself, essentially. Great story, could totally work, could be an awesome movie, but this movie just juggles a lot of things together, and the storyline in this movie is just really rinse and repeat. It's Jean Grey floats down into an area, breaks something, floats away, and goes on to do the same thing 3 more times, and then we have our ending finale on the train. And that is one of the greatest parts of this movie. That ending train sequence is actually phenomenal. It's one of the coolest battles in all the X-Men movies. And things like that give this movie a bit more of a rewatchable factor than my number 12 pick. Number 10 on my list is X-Men 3: The Last Stand. Now, this movie juggles way too many things all at once. This movie's trying to juggle Magneto's Brotherhood, it's trying to juggle the idea of the mutant cure, and it's trying to also juggle the Dark Phoenix, storyline. And all 3 are interesting, but all 3 together in one movie is a total mess. And that's what this movie is, a total mess. First off, right from the get-go, it brushes off Cyclops' death like nothing. It goes on, again, trying to jam so many different story elements together in one movie, and it never comes across all that well. There's some fun to be had in this movie. It finishes up, for the most part, really good trilogy. I really do like the first X-Men and the second one. This third one, again, pretty problematic movie. And then it does have a pretty good grand finale to it. It's not nearly the mess that Dark Phoenix is, and it's far more enjoyable of a watch than the New Mutants are. So that's why it takes this spot. Number 9 on my list is X-Men Apocalypse. Now, X-Men Apocalypse, it's one of those movies where every time I watch it, it just keeps going down in my mind. First time I saw it, I thought, oh wow, fantastic movie, almost as good as Days of Future Past. I don't know why my brain thought that. But every time I watch it after that, it just goes a little bit down in my mind. The villain of Apocalypse, that's my number 1 problem with this movie, is the villain of Apocalypse he's not that interesting, really. He just doesn't bring that much to the table. I think they were kind of trying to figure out what to do with Eric, and when they started with what happened to him is, look, he goes off and leads a simple life, and his family ends up dying right in front of him, and he just feels so lost as to who he really is. Maybe he just kind of, screams out, is this who I am? Am I just a guy that's meant to be a terrible person? I don't know. Very interesting, but then they don't really do anything else with him. They just kind of have him wander around behind Apocalypse and then move a whole bunch of trash with his hands, and then eventually, he has to figure out who he really is at the end of the movie. He just came across as very kind of a tired character in this movie. There is enjoyment with this movie. I really do enjoy Apocalypse. So there's a lot of things that I do like about the final battle sequences. It's half and half for me. On one hand, there is some really cool stuff, and on the other hand, it's kind of forgettable at the same time. So it's one of those end action sequences where you're enjoying the ride along the way, and then 10 minutes later, after you walked out of the movie, you're like, what happened again? It's one of those sequences. But there is some enjoyment to be had with this movie. One of the best sequences has to be the Alkaline Lake sequence with Weapon X. Oh, that one is amazing. That's full-on Weapon X mode, and I loved it. And it was also refreshing to introduce new characters into this new trilogy, shall we say, into the First Class trilogy, let's call it. New characters like Cyclops and Jean Grey, ones we've seen in the original X-Men trilogy. We get to see them here. I really dug their inclusion in this movie, and there's some fun to be had with this movie, but a lot of missteps along the way as well. So number 8 on my list is Deadpool 2. Now there's a big jump between X-Men Apocalypse and Deadpool 2 in my mind, in my ranking. The bottom, X-Men Apocalypse and the movies I listed below that, they're all okay to really bad. But Deadpool 2 is a good movie. The issue I have with Deadpool 2, look, I love Deadpool 1. You're going to see where that lands in this list pretty soon. But Deadpool 2 just, first off, they try to go bigger, and that doesn't necessarily mean better. They try to cram a lot of storylines, again, just like X-Men 3, try to cram a lot of storylines all into one, and it just really doesn't work out all that well. I didn't really appreciate where they went with that. That was kind of the beauty of the first Deadpool movie, just straightforward, simple story. Deadpool 2 is a bit of a cluttered mess. I did not appreciate how they, tried to kind of rinse and repeat old humor from the first movie into the second one. I found that to be really lazy of them. Some people, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you're in the theater and you watch it for the first time. You're kind of like, oh, hey, call back to a joke from the first Deadpool movie. Then after the third time it's happened, you're like, ooh, really? Okay, you guys are getting lazy. Come on, give me something new here. But Deadpool 2 is fun. It's still funny. Ryan Reynolds is still fantastic as Deadpool. Josh Brolin as Cable, I think, is a very welcome addition to this movie, and I think that he's one of the best parts of this movie as well. This movie is fun. It is a fun watch. It's nowhere near the level that the first Deadpool is. And again, it's because they tried to go bigger, and that doesn't necessarily mean better. Number 7 on my list is X-Men, the first X-Men movie. The movie that really kind of kicked off this modern comic book movie, kicked off this kind of modern comic book movie trend. This movie is absolutely fantastic. I love this movie. It really does a good job of building this world of mutants and this school that Charles Xavier runs, and really kind of explaining mutants without feeling explaining this world without feeling exposition dumpy throughout the way. A lot of things are really handled well. One of my favorite things, and I'm probably kind of an unpopular opinion, has this being one of my favorite things, because a lot of people didn't really like the character of Rogue in this movie. I don't understand that. I love Rogue in this movie, and I think that her and Logan's dynamic throughout this movie is one of the best things that there is. It really worked out for me, as Logan is a bit of a surrogate-like father figure to Rogue, and also at the same time kind of a friend. I really dug that. I think that that those two just really work well in this movie, and that was a lot of fun. And Magneto as well. What a fantastic villain! And while I'm not crazy about his plan and what he's trying to do, I think that part was a little off for me. The fact that he just wants to turn a bunch of people into mutants using this machine that he doesn't really quite understand. I hate to do this, but it's kind of like Amazing Spider-Man. What Lizard's plan was, both of which are just dumb, you know. It's kind of a dumb plan, and that's what kind of brings this movie down for me. Everything else about this movie works great. And getting back to Magneto, what I wanted to say about him is you brought a villain where you understand where he's coming from. He's not just a mustache twirling villain who's doing evil for the sake of doing evil. He actually is really a villain that you can really understand, that you can empathize with, and I dug that. And you get to see that a lot more in a lot of other X-Men movies, but this is the first one that really introduces him at that, and I really think they nailed that. The only problem that I have with him, again, is his actual plan. Number 6 on my list is The Wolverine. Now, this movie is leaps and bounds above X-Men Origins Wolverine. This is the Wolverine movie that we all deserved, and I really enjoy this. I know a lot of people aren't crazy about the Wolverine, and I don't understand why. This movie's fantastic. First off, I love when we're first introduced to Logan in this movie, just kind of where he's at in his life. He's just living out in the middle of the woods, absolutely miserable, completely isolated from people, and I like that. And then they bring him to Japan. I love how this movie takes place in Japan. I think that's a very fun setting. It's fun to see Logan there, and I know a lot of fans were really wanting to see that. We finally got it with this movie, and the story is absolutely great. The action is amazing. My favorite sequence has to be the funeral sequence, where Logan is first kind of losing his healing factor, but yet has to fight. Wonderful, wonderful sequence. Leads to the train sequence, which I'm not crazy about. It's not nearly as good as the funeral sequence, but it's a fun sequence, you know, a little goofy sometimes, but still, I mean, and the rest of this movie is absolutely wonderful. My only really complaint with this movie is just the third act gets a little goofy with the Silver Samurai and everything. But I don't. A lot of people hold that way too hard against this movie. Look, the rest of the movie is absolutely fantastic. It just gets a little goofy towards the end there, and that's fine. And one thing I gotta say about this movie, and I recommend this to everyone about the Wolverine, is get the extended, unrated version of this movie. I own it on Blu-ray, and it's awesome. It's the only way you should be watching this movie. So if you're looking to pick up a copy of this movie, you got to get that one, hands down. Number 5 on my list is X-Men First Class. Yes, the movie that none of us thought would be good, but it was awesome. This movie is fantastic. I absolutely, first off, again, like I said with Magneto and X-Men, I got to bring him back here because he's even better in this movie. When you see how he starts out and how he grows from there, you totally get where he's coming from. There are moments in this movie where he is about to do something horrible, horrific. He's going to murder tons of people. And you're sitting there going, I completely understand. I don't want you to do this. I don't agree with what you're doing, but I completely understand why you feel you need to do this. And I just love how we get to see a young Charles Xavier, and how we get to see him start off the X-Men for the first time in here. How we get to see a Mystique that's actually on Charles Xavier's side in this movie, and see how her character grows throughout the movie and how her character arc takes place. Everything about this movie just really works for me. I absolutely love this movie. Sometimes this movie does... sometimes the pacing of this movie is just a little off for me, but never terrible. X-Men First Class is an absolutely fantastic movie. All these movies that are coming up I would consider to be great A+ material right here, and X-Men First Class absolutely fits there. Number 4 on my list is X-Men 2, X-Men United. Yes, the sequel was better. The sequel of the first X-Men movie is absolutely phenomenal. I love X-Men 2 United. First off, the action I felt was done even better than the first one. It gets rid of a lot of the cheesy aspects that the first one had, and the villain's plan that goes along with this movie. Again, Magneto, you see his character and you get where he's coming from, and I absolutely love that in this movie. X-Men 2 is, what can I say? I mean, absolutely wonderful movie. My favorite in this movie would have to be when there's the attack on the actual school, and Logan just goes full Weapon X mode in there, and it is just terrifyingly awesome. And I absolutely loved it. And I like this movie. Like I said, I like the first X-Men movie, and this one basically takes everything that worked with X-Men and got rid of anything that didn't, and just capitalized on it and made it better. Exactly what a sequel should do. And this movie's an absolute win for me. I put it above First Class because while I find quality-wise them to be about the same level, I just find X-Men 2 more enjoyable. I find it more fun, and so that's why it sits where it is. Number 3 on my list, and I'm about to say this, my top 3 on this list could change at any moment. My number 3 pick could be my number 1 pick tomorrow. My number 2 pick could be my number 3, blah, 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 blah. Because they are so close in my mind, and they're so great for different reasons. So you're going to see that the 3 movies that I'm about to talk about are completely different movies, but they're all great in their own way. But number 3 on my list is Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past, a movie that I was slightly nervous about, but why in the world would I be? Because it was absolutely fantastic. I was excited about this movie coming off of X-Men First Class, because I really like X-Men First Class. But I was a little nervous because I thought, time travel, I don't know how that's going to play out in this movie. Oh my gosh, shut up, Aaron, because it was awesome. It works so well in this movie. I love how they send Logan back, and Logan's like, look, mentally I don't feel like the person to be in this scenario, but physically I was the only one who could. I really like that. I like his dynamic with young Charles Xavier. I think that all works really well. I love Magneto's arc throughout this movie. I thought that was just really enjoyable. And Mystique's. Absolutely. I thought Mystique's character arc was very well done in this movie. This movie is an absolute thrill ride. It's so enjoyable. Everything works out for it. I love how they were so bold to do a time travel movie that would kind of cause an alternate change to the X-Men timeline. I really enjoyed it, and I think it really paid off. And the ending of this movie just is so satisfying. It's so great. Days of Future Past, fantastic movie. Number 2 on my list is Deadpool. Yes, Deadpool. Like I said, it's leaps and bounds above Deadpool 2. Deadpool, it kept things simple. It was fun. It was original. It was very different from any superhero movie. It establishes right away, hey, Deadpool, he's not a hero. He's a total jerk. But he does do some heroic things along the way. And it's a hilarious movie. Great comedy, very enjoyable. Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool is fantastic. I just love that, again, this movie just takes a very simple storyline, just runs with it, with plenty of great humor along the way, plenty of bloody awesome action too, and the fact that they got an R rating out of this movie and were able to really push those boundaries and bring it to this movie would not have been the same PG-13. So I'm glad that they actually finally gave us a movie like this. Absolutely knocked it out of the park. Deadpool is fantastic. But number 1 on my list is Logan. In addition to being, in my opinion, the best X-Men movie, Logan is one of the best superhero movies of all time. It is a fantastic movie that really explores the character of Logan even far better than what we've seen. That movie came out in 2017, so for 17 years, we'd be getting movie after movie of Logan, but I felt none of them even came close to exploring who Logan is as a character than the movie Logan. In addition to that, you also have some wonderful action. They finally got that R rating where they were able to really up the ante of action because, let's face it, he's a guy that walks around with blades about this big coming out of his hands, so there's going to be some bloody graphic violence that goes along with whatever he's doing. And this movie finally got to showcase that, and it does it in such an amazing way. You get a little taste for it, like I said, with The Wolverine. The unrated version, they kind of up the graphicness of the violence in that movie. And it gives you a little sneak peek of what you can expect from Logan, and Logan's just all out. They don't hold back. I mean, and it is amazing action in this movie. In addition, one element of this movie that going into it for the first time I was actually kind of nervous about was Laura having the little girl in this movie. And oh my goodness, was I wrong. I mean, Daphne Keane pulls off a phenomenal performance in this movie. She's incredibly talented, and she does absolutely amazing in this movie. Really adds a lot, again, with being able to explore Logan, her and his dynamic in this movie. Though they may not exchange that many words, just how their relationship grows throughout this movie is phenomenal. And also Charles Xavier and Logan in the place where they are at in their lives in this movie. It's something very different than what we've seen from previous X-Men movies, and it was very enjoyable in this movie. Logan is a fantastic movie. James Mangold got a lot right with the Wolverine, and then he got everything right with Logan. I mean, what can I say? And that is why it makes my number 1 spot on this list. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep yourself updated on future content. And guys, let me know what your guys' list are. Put that in the comment section. I'm really curious because I feel like the X-Men franchise, first it was 13 movies. So I feel like no one's going to have the same list. But, you know, there's a lot of opinions about the X-Men movies, and I'm really curious to hear what you guys are. I don't think anyone's going to have the same list, but I want to hear what your guys' lists are. Put it in that comment section. Let me know. Guys, my review for Tenet's coming soon, so stay tuned for that.